Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Awagid's math class. We will be talking about slopes, and I would like you to watch the video about slopes that was posted before. It will explain how do you find the steepness of a surface, which is the slope. So for today's lesson, we will be talking about finding the slope in a coordinate plane, finding the equations that we can use to find the slope of a line in a coordinate plane. First of all, let's draw the coordinates, the y-axis and the x-axis where they meet at the origin. Then I would like to draw a line crosses the x and the y-axis. Now choose two dots on the line, and the yellow dots, the first one, I will name it x1, y1, and the second one, I will name it x2, y2, because I don't know what the value of x and y on that graph yet. So now we said the slope is the vertical line divided by the horizontal line. So I wanted you to draw a line to connect the first dot with the second one. So draw a vertical line first that goes from the first yellow line, but stop right there. And that would be the rise. And then from this point, run to the second dot, yellow dot, and that would be the run. Did you notice something? The rise is the same as the change in y. How did y change from this point to this point? And the run is the change of x. The change of y, the word change means minus or difference. So if I take the value of y2 minus y1, gives me the change in y, which is the rise. And if I take the x2 minus x1, which is the difference in the x's, gives you the change in the x, and that is the run. Slope, we talked about it. It's the ratio of vertical line divided by the horizontal line. And the letter m represents the slope. So m equal the change in y divided by the change of x, because the change in y is the vertical line and the change of x is the horizontal line. Now, we use symbols sometimes, so we can write delta y divided by delta x. That triangle is called delta, and delta means change. Another way, m equal, which is the slope equal, we can use the difference between the y's divided by the difference between the x's, because those are the change in y divided by the change of x. Another way to find the slope, m equal the rise divided by the run. The rise is the vertical line and the run is the horizontal line from one point on the line to get to the other point. Now let's find the slope of a line from a graph. Remember, the slope is the rate of change between any 2 points on the line, and it measures the steepness of a line. And those are the three different ways to find the slope. Since I have a graph, I will use the rise over run because it's much easier, and I will show you how to do that. First of all, I will connect the two pink dots, and I start from the left because you read graph from left to right. So I expect to see a positive slope because the line is going up. So let's go up from the first one where y, which is the vertical line, or the rise, increased by 6. And now let's run to get to the pink dot, which means the x increased by 9 because that's 9 spaces. So the slope is 6 over 9 using the two pink dots. Now let's use the two black dots and see what happens on the line because they all are solutions. If you use the two black dots, you rise 2, so the y will increase by 2, and then connect the second dot going right, which means the x increasing by 3, so you get 2 over 3. Are those the same slope? Yes. If I simplify 6 over 9, it gives you 2/3, so the slope between any 2 points on the line is the same. Here's another example, but this time the line is going down from left to right, so I expect to see a negative slope. I will use the rise over run because it's much easier, but this time I will prove it to you that no matter which two dots you use, you still get the same slope. So now I'm going to use the pink dot and the black dot on the bottom. Since you're going down, that means the y is going down or decreasing by 9, so it's negative 9 spaces. And then run to the black dot to the right, which means the x increasing by 3. So the slope is negative 9 over 3 because y decreased by 9 and the x increased by 3. Now let's choose one black dot with the pink dot. You're going down, so the y is decreasing by 3, and then you're going to the right to get to the other point, which means the x increasing by 1. So the slope is negative 3 over 1. If I simplify that, the slope of negative 3. Now let's find the slope of a horizontal line and a vertical line. This time I will use the equation of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 just to show you the two different ways. Let's choose negative 1, 5 as our x1, y1, which is the first point, and 6, 5 is the second point, x2, y2. Now substitute those values in the equation where y2 is 5 minus y1 is 5, and the x2 is 6 minus the x1 is negative 1. Watch how you put it in parentheses. So the slope equals 0 divided by 7 is 0. And I know that my answer is right because if I use 0 times 7, it does equal 0. So the slope is 0. The horizontal line, always the slope is 0. It's flat. Now let's talk about a vertical line. The vertical line, I will use also the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's name the points to use them. I will name for 6 x1, y1. That's my first point. And the second point for 2 x2, y2. Now substitute those values in the equation. 2 minus 6 divided by the x is 4 minus 4. So you end up with negative 4 over 0. Now what does that equal? Is there a number I can multiply it by 0, give me negative 4? It doesn't exist. Therefore, the slope m equal undefined. Okay, now let's find the slope from a table. Which equation would you use? The easiest equation to use to find the slope from a table is the change in y divided by the change of x. And if you remember, we said the change in y is delta y. So delta y means the change in y. Let's look at the table and see how did the value of y change from 6 to 4 to 2 to 0. It decreased by 2. So the change in y is negative 2. You always start with the y first because it's the vertical line. Now let's see delta x, or the change in x. How did the value of x change from negative 3, negative 2, negative 1 to 0? It increased by 1. So the change in x is positive 1, which means every time y decreased by 2, x will increase by 1. That's constant change. It does not change. So the slope, if I simplify that, equals negative 2. Now here's another table. Again, you use the change in y divided by the change of x. Change means delta. So let's find the change in y first, which is delta y. How did y change from 2 to 5 to 8 to 11? It increased by 2. So we always start with the change in y. It's positive 2. Now let's find the change of x, or delta x. How did x change from 1 to 3 to 5 to 7? It increased by 2. So every time x increased by 2, y will increase by 2. That's a constant rate of change, or constant change. Simplify that. Positive 2 divided by positive 2 equals 1. So the slope equals 1. So find the slope of a line that passes through those two coordinates, negative 3, 1 and negative 1, 5. I would use the equation of m equal y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find the slope. So let's define our coordinates. The first one is x1, y1, and the second one is x2, y2 for us to replace or substitute those numbers in the equation. So substitute y2 with 5, y1 with 1, so 5 minus 1, and the x2 is negative 1, and minus x1, which is negative 3. But subtracting a negative is the same as adding. So the slope is 4 over 2, but when I simplify that, I get 2. Now, how can we decide if two lines are parallel lines? Two lines are parallel if they have the same slope. So look at those three lines, blue, red, and green. Let's find the slope for all three of them and see which two has the exact same slope. I will use the rise over run this time because it's much easier for me. You can use the 2 points y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 and find the slope. Blue line to find the slope rise over run. Let's start with the bottom dot. I know I will end up with a positive slope for all three of them because it's going up from left to right. So now let's use the first one and go up and stop right before you get to the dot. So the y increased by 4. Now run to get to the point. That is increased by 1. So the y increased by 4 and the x increased by 1. So the slope is 4 over 1. Now let's use the red line. Same thing, use the rise over run to find the slope. Start from the bottom dot and go up. That's an increase in 5 for the y. So the rise is 5. Then run to get to the second point. That is 1 unit. So the x increasing by 1. So the red line has a slope of 5 over 1. Now let's see the green line. Again, I will use the rise over run to find the slope. Start from the bottom dot, go up to get to the second one. So you went up by 4, so the y increased 4. Now run to get to the point. The x increased by 1. So the slope is 4 over 1. So which two lines have the same slope? The blue line and the green line are parallel lines because they have the same slope of 4. Now let's talk about perpendicular lines. Lines that intersect at right angles are perpendicular lines. So here's a graph. Let's graph x equal -4, which is a vertical line. Remember how to graph this. Go to the x-axis, -4, and put that black dot, and then draw a line through it. That is a vertical line crossing the x. Now let's graph y equals 5, and that would be a horizontal line. So go to the y-axis, find +5, put that black dot, and draw a line through it, and it will be a horizontal line crossing the y at 5. Watch how the lines intersected at 90-degree angle. So the lines are perpendicular lines. Any number multiplied by its reciprocal equals 1. Here's a fraction 2/7. If I multiply it by its reciprocal, and a reciprocal is flip that fraction. So multiply it by 7 over 2. What does that give you? To multiply fractions, you multiply across. 2 times 7 and 7 times 2 gives you 14 over 14. Simplify that, which is 1. 14 divided by 14 is 1. Any number multiplied by its negative reciprocal equals -1. And this will take us to how can we find if two lines are perpendicular. Now let's decide from this graph which two lines are perpendicular lines. Two lines are perpendicular when the product of their slopes is -1. So if I multiply the slopes of two lines and I get -1, they are perpendicular. So let's explain that. So let's start with the blue line, and I will use the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find the slope. Substitute the values from the coordinates -5, 6, and 1, 4. You end up with 4 minus 6 divided by 1 minus -5. Simplify that, gives you -2 over 6. Now the red line, again the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Use the two coordinates -5, 0 and 2, -2. So -2 minus 0 divided by 2 minus -5 equals -2 over 7. Now the green line, again, I will use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Use the two green coordinates, -2, -2, and 0, 5. -2 minus 5 over -2 minus 0. Simplify that, gets you -7 divided by -2. Negative divided by negative is positive, so you get 7 over 2. So which two lines, if I multiply these slopes, give me -1? The red line and the green line are perpendicular lines because when I multiply -2 over 7 times 7 over 2 gets you -1. This is probably a little bit complicated. Just to explain it easier, if one line has a positive slope and another line has the negative reciprocal, which means negatives flip the fraction, of the same slope, then the lines are perpendicular lines. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you for watching.